Hello, I am an administrator, a high school administrator and a doctoral student, and my research actually focuses on standards. And I guess my question really comes down to if some of the larger committees, some of the larger national, federal organizations can find a way to reduce the amount of fracture that we have. What I found in some of my beginnings of my research were that we have our state standards, we have our national standards, but then there are many of our content organizations that have standards. And so it seems as though not only do we have the pressures of our school and our district and accountability for those, but we have so many organizations that are all focused on the same thing, but even within our own community, our science educational community can't seem to come up with one cohesive unit of direction. And in many situations, I feel like that may be the beginning of some of the work that we do. I applaud the Achieve organization, but even when we look at that, I'm also a board member of the Illinois Science Teachers Association. And as a board member, we're talking about how can we get involved in the Achieve program, or how can we get involved in some of the creation of some of the standards that we have. And we're struggling getting involved as a state committee. And I guess the basis of that is we're all fractured. We have different standards, we have different beliefs, and maybe we could make a bigger influence if we ourselves could come together more. Maybe some of that push coming more from a federal level seems to be easier than one or two states. Even Achieve said, we started 5 years ago and we're really happy now with the English and the math because about 20 states have signed on. Well, where's the push to get the other 30 states? Or what about even science? We take the test, but we're not accountable yet. So math and English are important, but science is just kind of important. Maybe if we could make the push, it seems a little off balance for us to ask for more, but we haven't come together yet. Does that make sense?
Well, I would just make a general comment on that. You're right about how fractured things can often seem to be, and I would go back to the point made earlier about how we all have to operate from where we are to address those issues. And I think of a colleague at the National Science Foundation who was responsible for the programs in the Biological Sciences Directorate. He said, here is a big problem we've got. The leading biologists in the country don't agree on what's really core, what's the central. He says, so what can happen? He said, my job, as I see it, is to reduce the size of the undergraduate textbook in biology, the most leading textbooks around, because how in the world, this is what's used for teacher education, and if you're trying to cover everything. So what he was doing was bringing together the research scientist, saying, I know that you really like your own discipline and you want people to know every detail in your discipline, but if we've got all these sub-disciplines, so what in the world is this going to mean? It actually got a lot of attention. It's still underway. Between that and the Howard Hughes Foundation, Howard Hughes Medical Institute has been helping address the same kind of a thing. And so there are responsibilities at every level as we try to ask to get to the kind of core knowledge that we think would need to be there. And that is an issue that's come up time and again when we talk about science education quite broadly. So this is again to applaud you for recognizing and your willingness to say, I will, wherever I am, help to address the sorts of issues. And it's through those kinds of mechanisms that I think we will be able to make the kind of progress we're all seeking.
I think what I'm going to need to do because of the time is just sum up here, and I appreciate your comments, your questions. Just a couple of notes for you. One is the film clips you saw this morning. We actually will show about 35 minutes of that this afternoon. I can't remember where it is, and I should know that, but I guess it's in this room. Thank you. And in that particular session, there are teaching materials to go along with it, and you'll get a chance to talk with the producer, the director of the film, and it's an independently produced film. And so if you want to get a sense of how you might use that even with students, or even your colleagues back in your states or districts. So I think to maybe summarize, and I hesitate to even try, because I think we've addressed many different issues, but probably more than anything, and I think this is one way to think about it, we've identified some of the things that we can do. We know there's a lot more research about what we do. We need to figure out ways to inform other people about those that have influence. And there are multiple levels to this. And no matter where you are, you have a way to influence the system. There's a definition, or that was just a phrase of definition of leadership, and it really is very broad, and I use this sometimes to talk about for educators. You know, leaders are people who can identify a problem and then work to find the solution. And we often identify the problems and then stop. So think about as you go through this what you've heard. You saw people, our panelists, struggle with some of those questions that you had. And you know, each of you have a role in particular ways and try to utilize those. And this sort of frame that I laid out earlier, I don't think it's going to go away. We need to be conscious of it and thinking about it at all times. But maybe you can just join me in thanking the panelists for joining me here. And thank you very much for coming.